She walked into the bank, a billionaire CEO, and walked out with nothing but her dignity. No shouting, no scenes, just silence, and the end of a $2 billion partnership. What happened in those 17 seconds changed everything. It started with silence, then shattered dignity. Dr. Maya Russell stood at the entrance of one of the country's most prestigious banks. Dressed in a crisp white dress that spoke of elegance and quiet power, she carried herself with grace, her black stilettos tapping gently on the marble floors as she approached the reception desk. The lobby buzzed with quiet activity. Phones ringing, hushed conversations, the occasional shuffle of papers. But the moment she stepped in, something changed. It wasn't loud or obvious, just a shift, a subtle tension in the air, like the temperature dropped a few degrees. Maya wasn't just any customer. She was the CEO of Russell Dynamics, a multi-billion-dollar tech firm revolutionizing AI infrastructure for global logistics and defense. Today, she was there to finalize a historic partnership worth over $2 billion in assets and services. The bank's senior vice president had personally arranged the meeting, promising red carpet treatment and full confidentiality. Everything had been lined up. The contracts were waiting upstairs. The deal was, as they say in the business world, a done deal. But then came the moment. As she reached the front desk, Maya smiled politely and said, "Good morning. I'm here for a 10 a.m. appointment with Mr. Richard Lorne." He reserved the executive conference room under Russell Dynamics. The teller behind the desk, a white woman in her early 30s, sharp blazer, red lipstick, didn't return the smile. She looked Maya up and down, then said coldly, "I'll need to see your ID." Maya nodded and reached into her designer tote, pulling out her official government-issued ID and a laminated corporate badge. The two items had her name, title, and even a secure barcode linking to her verification record. But instead of scanning the documents, the teller narrowed her eyes, looked at Maya, then back at the ID. "Are you sure this is yours?" she asked, almost mockingly. Maya blinked, slightly confused. "Excuse me," I said. "Are you sure this ID belongs to you?" The teller repeated louder, as if Maya hadn't heard. There was something in her tone, a bite, a challenge, and something more insidious, disbelief. Before Maya could respond, the teller huffed, rolled her eyes, and in a move so abrupt it felt theatrical, tossed the ID onto the floor. It didn't just fall. It was thrown like trash. There was an audible gasp from someone nearby. One of the clients seated in the waiting area looked up, stunned. A young woman behind the glass counter smirked, whispering something to her colleague. The room fell into a heavy silence. Maya looked down at her ID lying on the cold, shiny floor. For a few seconds, she didn't move. Her posture was still perfect, her face calm, but her eyes held a quiet fire. Slowly, with poise and control, she knelt down and picked up her ID. She didn't say a word. No anger, no outburst, no dramatic monologue. She simply stood up, placed her ID back in her bag, turned around, and walked out of the bank without a single glance back. The entire room remained still. The teller, perhaps realizing something was off, looked slightly confused, but not apologetic. What she, and the rest of the bank, didn't know was that they had just insulted a woman who held the keys to a $2 billion corporate deal, one that would have transformed the financial future of their institution. Upstairs on the 16th floor of the bank's corporate tower, Richard Lorne, vice president of enterprise partnerships, adjusted his navy tie and stared at the door. The conference room had been prepared with meticulous care. A fresh spread of pastries, designer bottled water, and 3 polished folders containing the final versions of a corporate partnership proposal sat neatly on the table. This wasn't just another meeting. It was a capstone moment. Russell Dynamics was the most significant account he'd ever pursued. A multi-billion-dollar tech firm with government contracts, elite investors, and a flawless market reputation. Winning their business would immediately double the bank's West Coast tech portfolio. It would give Richard something no one else in the company could claim, a unicorn client in enterprise fintech banking. At precisely 9:59 a.m., he got a text from his assistant. "Dr. Russell is in the building. She's checking in at the lobby desk now." Richard smiled and straightened his blazer. He had practiced his greeting 3 times that morning. The CEO of Russell Dynamics was a notoriously sharp negotiator, but he admired her tenacity. He was ready to impress. What he didn't know was that just one floor below, everything had already gone off the rails. As the minutes ticked by, Richard grew uneasy. First 5 minutes passed, then 10. By 10:15, he asked his assistant to call down and confirm. The receptionist replied, "She never made it to the meeting. Maybe she's running late." Running late? That didn't sound like Maya Russell. She was known for being punctual, even early. Her time was tracked in minutes, not hours. Richard's chest tightened. Something was wrong. At 10:30, he personally called Maya's office line. No answer. At 11:15, his assistant called Maya's head of corporate staff. The response was short, direct, and icy. Dr. Russell has decided not to proceed with the partnership. Thank you for your time. Click. Richard sat stunned, his mouth half open as if he still expected more explanation. He didn't get one. He called again. No answer. He sent an email. No reply. By 12 p.m., the news had already reached the Executive Risk Committee. Everyone had questions. What went wrong? Who offended her? Why would she cancel with no explanation? At 2 p.m., Richard made his way down to the front desk, hoping to piece together the morning's events. What he found shook him to the core. The receptionist who had checked Maya in, the same woman who threw her ID on the floor, was on her lunch break. Her coworker pulled up the security camera footage. There, in high-definition silence, they watched the scene unfold. The ID exchange, the dismissive look, the moment it was tossed to the floor, Maya's poised reaction, and her silent exit. Richard leaned back, speechless. He realized in that instant that no contract, no polished pitch deck, and no corporate incentives could undo what happened in those 10 seconds. It wasn't about business anymore. It was about respect. Maya didn't leave over a bad offer. She left because a billion-dollar institution failed to offer her basic human decency. She walked in with power. She walked out with purpose. To fully grasp the weight of what happened inside that bank lobby, you need to understand exactly who Dr. Maya Russell is and why one act of quiet disrespect set off a storm that would change the landscape of corporate America. Maya Russell wasn't born in a privilege. In fact, she was raised in a world where ambition had to fight for breath. She grew up in a modest neighborhood in southwest Atlanta, in a 2-bedroom apartment where the walls were thin and opportunity was even thinner. Raised by a single mother, Denise Russell, a woman with nerves of steel and hands worn raw from late-night cleaning shifts, Maya watched her mother hustle with grace, humility, and relentless resilience. Denise had a saying, "They could take everything from you, your job, your money, even your name, but not your mind. That's your weapon. That's your shield." Maya didn't just memorize that line. She built her life on it. She was a curious child, intensely so. She'd stay up late, not watching cartoons, but trying to crack logic puzzles or take apart old VCRs. By the age of 10, she was creating makeshift gadgets using discarded electronics from her cousin Marcus's junkyard job. She once turned a broken toaster into a working phone charger using wire, duct tape, and 2 AA batteries. Teachers called her a prodigy, but Maya never liked that word. Genius isn't a gift, she used to say. It's pressure you can't drop. It's expectations you didn't ask for. Money was always tight, but Maya was tighter with her time. Every second spent either learning or building. Despite the struggles, she earned a full scholarship to Spelman College, where she double majored in mathematics and computer science. While others went to parties, Maya stayed in her dorm, studying neural networks and natural language models. Her professors knew she was destined for something greater, and so did Silicon Valley. She earned her PhD in artificial intelligence at Stanford, focusing on real-time machine learning models used in critical infrastructure, city grids, emergency systems, hospital management. She was one of just 5 black women in her doctoral cohort, and often the only one in the room during conferences. She got used to being the other. It sharpened her, but it also scarred her. After graduation, she was offered high-paying jobs from some of the biggest tech firms in the world. She declined them all. Why? I didn't want to build someone else's empire. I wanted to build one that made room for everyone. In 2014, she started Russell Dynamics out of a cramped office in Oakland, California. There were only 4 engineers, 2 used laptops, and a dream bigger than any of them could explain. Maya's mission wasn't just to create technology, it was to democratize it. Her first client was a logistics company losing millions due to system inefficiencies. Maya's AI systems improved their operations by 32%, a game changer. That's when everything exploded. By 2022, Russell Dynamics had over 3,000 employees, government contracts with the Department of Defense, multiple appearances on Forbes' Tech Titans list, tech incubator partnerships with Howard, MIT, and Spelman, and a strong commitment to hiring from underserved communities. Still, Maya never took her success for granted. She hosted free coding boot camps in Atlanta. She mentored Black girls in STEM. She donated to schools that had no functioning computer labs. And she kept her company 100% Black-owned. Ownership isn't just about money, she once said. It's about narrative. Who gets to tell the story and who gets erased. It was a crisp Wednesday morning when Maya entered the lobby of a major national bank, one she had worked with for 7 years. She wore a tailor navy suit and carried a portfolio for a new $40 million account expansion. She didn't come to ask for a loan. She came to offer business. The teller, a young white man in his late 20s, didn't recognize her. "Do you have an appointment?" he asked flatly. "Yes, 10:30. Maya Russell," she replied with a warm, professional tone. He raised an eyebrow. Then, without saying a word, he looked her up and down. Maya handed over her ID and corporate card. The teller squinted, frowned, and let the ID fall to the floor. Maya blinked. It didn't just drop, it was dismissed, palmed and dropped like lint. She knelt down and picked it up herself. When she stood back up, the teller said, "We'll need to verify this. It's a substantial amount." There was no apology, no professionalism, just cold skepticism wrapped in customer service. In that moment, Maya felt the full weight of every boardroom where she'd been mistaken for the assistant, every hotel lobby where she'd been asked if she was looking for someone, every time she'd been called articulate like it was a surprise. But this wasn't subtle. This was a statement. "You may have power on paper," the world whispered, "but not here. Not in this space." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't tweet. She didn't call the manager. She picked up her documents. She looked the teller in the eye, and she walked out, slowly, calmly, but with the force of 1,000 ancestors behind her. Behind her walk was a quiet decision. $2 billion in current and future capital would not go through that institution again. Within 24 hours, all Russell Dynamics accounts were closed. Future deals were redirected to a Black-owned financial firm based in Atlanta. That firm, previously small, now had a Fortune 500 tech giant in its portfolio. Their stock tripled in 6 months. The original bank? They issued a statement 3 weeks later, too little, too late. Maya never mentioned their name publicly. She didn't have to. The silence spoke louder than outrage ever could. People noticed. Other Black executives started sharing their own quiet exits. Institutions started reviewing training policies. DEI teams were formed. A whisper became a wave. Maya didn't aim to make headlines. She aimed to make history. Today, Russell Dynamics continues to expand globally, opening R&D hubs in Kenya, Brazil, and Detroit. Maya is now not just a tech leader. She's a movement. Her story is taught in business schools. She's cited in corporate ethics lectures. But more importantly, she's proof. Proof that power isn't always loud, that justice doesn't always wear a picket sign, and that sometimes walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. So the next time someone asks why she didn't just speak up, tell them she did. With her silence, with her walk, and with a $2 billion lesson in dignity. Let me know if you'd like a voiceover script style, Urdu version, animated scene breakdown, or thumbnail title suggestions. Inside the bank's executive offices, panic was spreading faster than wildfire. The abrupt collapse of the Russell Dynamics partnership triggered an immediate internal investigation. By the next morning, every senior executive from the CEO down to the floor manager had been looped into what was being referred to as the lobby incident. In the official report, the words were clinical. Client expressed dissatisfaction with front desk interaction. Meeting was not attended. Partnership withdrawn. No further contact. But the truth was far from clinical. It was personal. It was public. And soon it would be viral. By Monday afternoon, the bank's social media team flagged a suspicious spike in online mentions of the institution. A single tweet had begun circulating. Imagine building a $2 billion empire only to have your ID thrown on the floor by a bank teller who couldn't recognize Black excellence. The way Dr. Maya Russell just walked out in silence, legendary. Hashtag respect Black women. The tweet had over 1.8 million views within 24 hours. No one from Russell Dynamics had said anything publicly, but the silence was loud, deafening even. That one act of quiet dignity had ignited storm. Influencers, tech founders, celebrities, and political leaders were reposting the incident with captions like, "And this is why we build our own. What would they have done if she was in sweats?" Excellence doesn't protect us from bias. Within 72 hours, a clip of the lobby surveillance footage had leaked. It was 17 seconds long. No audio. But the image of the teller flicking the ID onto the floor told the whole story. People didn't need to hear what was said. They saw enough. By Tuesday, the bank's press office issued a generic statement. "We are reviewing an interaction involving a valued guest and one of our employees. We take all client experiences seriously and are committed to fostering a respectful, inclusive environment for all." It wasn't enough. The next morning, hashtags like hashtag #BankingWhileBlack and hashtag RussellWalked were trending on every platform. Several high-profile clients of the bank began reevaluating their own partnerships. A few issued public statements expressing deep concern about the institution's internal culture. The internal temperature climbed higher. An emergency board meeting was called. Lawyers were consulted. The VP of Partnerships, Richard Lorne, formally submitted his resignation, even though he wasn't directly involved. "I failed to protect that relationship," he said in his resignation letter. "And for that, I take full accountability." But many employees argued that it wasn't just about one incident. Anonymous reviews from bank staff began surfacing online, sharing experiences of racial microaggressions, unfair promotions, and toxic departmental leadership. The media seized the opportunity. The business journals covered the massive missed deal of the year. Black enterprise platforms wrote editorials titled, "Respect is more valuable than capital." CNN Business ran a segment called "How a 10-second interaction cost $2 billion." It wasn't just embarrassing. It was devastating. Internally, damage control spiraled into a full-blown culture audit. Consultants were hired. Town halls were scheduled. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, officers were promoted. But many staffers, especially people of color, felt it was too little, too late. And then came the real kicker. 3 weeks after the incident, Russell Dynamics issued a press release. "We are proud to announce a strategic banking partnership with Unity Capital, a Black-owned financial institution focused on tech innovation, economic equity, and executive representation." Unity Capital had only a fraction of the resources of the original bank, but it had Maya's trust. The announcement sent Unity's stock soaring. Dozens of minority-owned firms followed suit, transferring assets to Unity Capital in solidarity. The message was clear. Respect isn't optional anymore. It's a business requirement. The bank that lost Maya didn't just lose a client. It lost credibility. It lost trust. It lost its future pipeline of high-profile partnerships. And all because one employee, one moment, failed to recognize that the woman standing in front of her wasn't asking for special treatment. She was simply asking to be seen. The $2 billion walkout, when silence spoke louder than rage. This story wasn't just about a bank. It wasn't just about a CEO. And it certainly wasn't just about an ID card thrown on the floor. This story was about power, perception, and a quiet act of resistance that sent a shockwave through corporate America. Because on that ordinary Tuesday morning, in a polished, glass-walled lobby, something extraordinary happened. A Black woman took back control. Not by shouting, not by suing, not by tweeting, but by walking away. To understand the weight of what happened in that lobby, you have to know who Dr. Maya Russell is. Dr. Maya Russell wasn't born with a silver spoon or legacy wealth. She was born in Southwest Atlanta, in a two-bedroom apartment, raised by a single mother, Denise, who worked as a school secretary by day and cleaned office buildings by night. Maya didn't grow up hearing stories about Silicon Valley or hedge funds. She grew up hearing her mother say, "They can take everything from you, except what's in your mind. That's your power." And Maya took that message seriously. She was the kid who stayed up late tinkering with old gadgets her cousin brought home from a junkyard job. At 10, she could already troubleshoot radios, rewire fans, and code simple games on an old donated laptop. By high school, she was winning national math competitions. She earned a full ride to Spelman, double majored in math and computer science, and was eventually accepted into Stanford, where she earned a PhD in artificial intelligence, one of the few black women ever to do so. But Maya wasn't just brilliant. She was visionary. She saw AI not just as a tool for profit, but as a pathway for equality. In 2014, with 2 used laptops for engineers and a dream bigger than her bank account, she launched Russell Dynamics, a company designed to use AI for real-world impact, supply chains, healthcare, disaster response, and education. Fast forward a decade, and Russell Dynamics is now serving government and defense contracts, employing over 3,000 people, mentoring thousands of women and minorities in STEM, and valued at over $2.6 billion. This woman had made it to the top. She was not just in the room, she built the room. But none of that mattered when she walked into that downtown bank. She wasn't wearing flashy jewelry. No entourage, no designer logo. Just a tailored white dress and a quiet confidence that came from years of beating the odds. She walked up to the counter to finalize documents for a $2 billion partnership transfer. But the teller didn't see her brilliance, didn't see the doctorate, didn't recognize the awards. All she saw was a black woman she didn't know. And instead of greeting her with respect, she looked at Maya with suspicion. "Can I see your ID?" Maya handed it over without hesitation. She knew how the world worked. She didn't expect celebrity treatment. But what happened next shocked even her. The teller looked at the ID, then tossed it onto the floor. Not a mistake, not a slip, a gesture, a message. And in that moment, time slowed. Maya bent down and picked up her ID. The room was quiet. Everyone saw it happen, but no one said a word. The other women in line looked uncomfortable. The teller smirked, unbothered. Maya stood up, nodded once, and walked out. No shouting, no confrontation, no viral recording, just silence. But behind that silence, a storm. Within hours, Maya contacted her legal team and instructed them to terminate all business dealings with that bank. The upcoming $2 billion partnership? Gone. All employee payroll services? Transferred. All accounts? Closed. Maya didn't make a scene, she made a move. And that move sent ripples across the financial world. The next day, Russell Dynamics released a quiet statement. "We are redirecting our financial partnerships toward institutions aligned with our values of equity, respect, and dignity. We believe trust is earned, not assumed." There was no name mentioned, no scandal manufactured, but the message was crystal clear. And when the security footage leaked a week later, showing the exact moment that teller tossed Maya's ID on the floor, the internet erupted. The reason the clip went viral wasn't because it was outrageous. It was because it was common. Millions of women of color saw themselves in that 17-second video. That pause, that glare, that dismissal. It wasn't just Maya's story, it was theirs too. But here's what made Maya's response different. She didn't explain. She didn't justify. She didn't demand an apology. She didn't give anyone a chance to manage the optics or handle the situation. She simply walked away. And in doing so, she gave people something far more powerful than outrage. Permission. Permission to protect their dignity, even when it's costly. Permission to stop educating those who won't listen. Permission to take the high road without making it comfortable for those who failed you. Because for far too long, black women have been expected to tolerate disrespect in silence, to forgive, to smile, to keep the peace. But this time, silence was the protest, and the silence roared. The bank scrambled, of course. They released a standard statement about reviewing the incident. They placed the teller on administrative leave. They promised bias training and new policies. But it was too late. The damage wasn't to their reputation, it was to their relevance. Because Maya didn't just withdraw money, she withdrew legacy. She took with her a future pipeline of partnerships, innovators, and investors who respected her choice. And she inspired other CEOs to rethink who they give their power to. Suddenly, conversations started happening in boardrooms. Executives quietly reached out to Maya, saying, "Thank you for walking away. I've stayed in rooms I should have left. You reminded me I don't have to." It wasn't just about cancel culture, it was about choice culture. And power? Power is knowing you have a choice. So what happens next? The bank will move on. They always do. They'll rebrand, change their slogans, highlight diversity in their ads. But what they lost cannot be rebranded. Because trust isn't built on PR. It's built in moments. And that moment, when a self-made billionaire, a woman who had shattered barriers with nothing but brilliance, was treated like an inconvenience, that moment burned itself into the memory of a generation. And the message it carried? We still have work to do, not just in banks, but in schools, offices, hospitals, media, and every space where unconscious bias still operates like background noise. Because respect shouldn't be conditional. Dignity shouldn't be up for debate. And power shouldn't be used to remind people where they don't belong. It should be used to create spaces where everyone does. Maya Russell didn't just walk out of the bank that day. She walked into history, and she reminded us all. Sometimes the loudest message isn't shouted. Sometimes it's a quiet walk away and a door that closes forever. Thanks for watching the video. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories just like this.